Hey guys, this is Zal. I'm posting instructions about how to finish making our histograms. And I figured this is a little bit better way for me to reach you guys. We have such a big class. It's hard for me to give you guys instruction individually, but if I record this video, you guys can all watch the video. If you miss something, you can just back up in the video and see it again. Okay. So here's where we are now. We have, well, you don't have any of this stuff yet. Okay. So right now, what you should have are these things, what I have selected here. So remember, we're trying to make a histogram. We have a bunch of people's ages. We've ascertained the minimum and the maximum ages. And we've created our bins. Okay, so the people in this data set, they range in age from 17.5 to 57. And we've cut that range up into 8 bins, okay, and those bins are what's displayed right here. The first one goes from 17.5 to 22.4. The second one goes from 22.4 to 27.4. Each one of these bins is something like 5 years across. Okay, and now what we want to do is we simply want to count the number of people in this who have ages falling into these bins. Okay, and so how do we do that? Well, what I want you to do right now is create these 2 columns, or these 3 columns. Okay, you're going to name this one count 1, you're going to name this one count 2, and you're going to name the final one count. And this count, this will be the actual number that we're looking for. Okay, but in order to create this number, we need to have a few more steps. There's a few in between steps. Okay, so now let's take a look at how to create this first cell under count 1. What this will be, okay, is this will be the, well, let me just show you how to do it, and then I'll explain why we're doing it like this. Okay, so I'm going to double click this cell. Let's delete what I have in here. Okay, I'm going to press equals. I'm going to say count if. Okay, now count if requests a range of values over which we'll be counting. So I want to go over to the left. I'm using my keyboard. Go over to the left to this 37. Now holding down Shift and Control or Command on a Mac, I want to go down. Okay, select that whole range, and then I want to turn this into an absolute cell reference. I don't want this to be a relative cell reference, so I'm going to press F4 or Command T on a Mac. Okay, and notice that switches this guy into an absolute cell reference. Okay, and that's our range. Okay, in our criteria, what are we counting? We want to select this 17.5, and here we want to leave it as a relative cell reference. Press Enter. Okay. Now, so this is going to count the number of 17.5s. If I paste this formula, if I copy this formula and paste it over to the adjacent cell, okay, this is going to count the number of 22.4s. Okay, well here's the problem, right? You're thinking to yourself, okay, but I don't want to count exactly the values which are 17.5 and which are 22.4. I want to count the number of values between 7.5 and 22.4, right? That's the issue. And so in order to do that, we need to change our expression a little bit. Okay, we need to change the count if function. And what we're going to do is we're going to make it so that this number is the number of values smaller than 22.4. This number is the number of values smaller than 17.5, and then we'll subtract those 2 numbers, and that'll be the number of people who are between 17.5 years old and 22.4 years old in our sample. That is to say, the number of people in our first bin. Okay. So how do I do that? Well, I'm going to double click on this formula. Okay, this is 22.4. Okay, and I'm going to so now my criterion is simply 22.4. Well, we want it to be less than or equal to 22.4. So how do we do that? I put in quotes. Less than or equal to. Okay, and then I add the ampersand. Okay, to let the computer understand that we're connecting those 2 statements. Okay, so now instead of saying count everything that's exactly 22.4, we're counting everything that's less than or equal to 22.4. And we're going to say enter. Okay, so now notice that there are 123 people in our sample who are younger than 22.4. Now for this one, for the one right next to it, Okay, what we want to do is we want to count all of the numbers strictly smaller than 17.5, which in this case will be 0. Okay, so what I want to do here is, in other words, I want to count all of the numbers less than 17.5. Notice this RC minus 3 is referring to the 17.5. Okay, so I have less than, and then I need this, in quotes, I need this ampersand, and I press OK. Okay, and these two formulas, now, if I extend them all the way down, if I take this formula and drag it all the way down, take this formula, drag it all the way down, okay, these counts here will be the number of people who are in our, who are smaller than the edges of our bin. So for example, here, okay, for this row, what this means is that there are 123 people who are younger than 22.4 years old, but there are 276 people who are younger than 27.4 years old. So the number of people between the ages of 22.4 and 27.4 will be the difference in these two numbers, and that's what I have in this count row. This count is simply equal to this count 2 minus count 1. Okay, and so this number here, this range of values, this is equal to the number of people who are in each one of these bins. Okay, and we've computed that in 2 steps by counting the number of people smaller than the big edge of the bin, that is to say the larger number that defines the edge of the bin, and subtracting the number of people who are less than the smaller side of the bin. Okay. Okay, so now we have these counts. So this count here, okay, really is the information that we need in the histogram. I can hide these 2 columns. Let me hide these 2 columns. So select your columns and then right-click and say hide. Okay, and let's make this column 7 a little bit smaller. And basically what we have here is our histogram. Here are the different bins. Here's where they start and end. And here's the number of people between number of people who lie in each one of these bins. Okay, now to make the bar graph, what we need to do is we need to select these values here, okay, and simply insert a chart. So I'm going to select these guys here, and I'm going to go into column. So I go to insert, column, select this first graph here, this 2D graph, okay, and notice that, notice that it creates a bar graph. However, there are a few things that we need to edit here. Notice that here, the labels of this bar graph, okay, these different bars don't refer to the age ranges. They're just numbered 1 through 8. We can change them. Okay, so right-click one of the bars, click select data. Okay, select data, and then here under horizontal category axis labels, okay, these are the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 that we had. We don't want that. Click edit. Okay, it's going to ask you for a range of values. Click select range here, and then go into your spreadsheet and actually select these values. Okay, and then just pull that back there, click OK, and you'll see what it does is it changes this to correctly display the ages. Now I want to just press OK here. Okay, and here we have a histogram of the ages. And the last thing that I like to do is select one of these bars, select format data series, and what we can do here is we can make the bars a little bit wider. So I usually like to leave a 2% gap instead of 150% gap. Okay, and this looks a little bit more professional. This looks like an actual histogram. Okay, so here's that histogram. Okay, so to review, we made these bin sizes. Okay, let me unhide the columns. If you want to unhide the columns, just select them and press unhide. Okay, so we made these. First we made our bins. Then we counted the number of people inside each bin by differencing the number of people from the highest point of the bin to the number of people from the lowest point of the bin. Okay, that's what these were. And then we took the difference of those 2 values and got the count, and then we plotted that count in a bar graph instead. Okay, so that's how you make the histograms. If you have questions about that, call me over. I'll help you look over it. But that's the basic idea. Okay.